Good evening and welcome. My name is Jennifer Ray with JMT, the consultant firm assisting DDOT with this project. Welcome to the Florida Avenue, New York Avenue Northeast Extension intersection project. This is an open meeting, and as required by DC Code 2578, this meeting is being recorded and the recording will be made available to the public. The video file, which has both audio and video, will be shared on the project team's website at the web address shown on the screen, www.floridaavproject.com, by Tuesday, November 16th, and will also be available on the YouTube channel. This meeting is currently being streamed at facebook.com/d.dc. If you do not wish to have your voice recorded, then please do not ask to speak. Instead, you may enter questions and answers or questions and comments in the Q&A, which we will review in the next few slides. If you are having any technical issues or require technical support during this meeting, please call Molly Burns at 202-309-3491. For using WebEx audio and muting, everyone is currently on mute and you cannot unmute yourself. We can unmute you during the Q&A period. Again, note this meeting is being recorded, so if you do not wish for your voice to be recorded, we'll go over how to enter in the Q&A field. This helps us ensure this meeting will run smoothly and there are no auditory disruptions during the presentation. To request to speak, you will need to raise the hand feature, which we will go over shortly. In addition, your video camera is off by default and you will not be able to share video. This is to help reduce the bandwidth of the meeting. Only the project team will be sharing video to improve the overall meeting quality for all participants. For comments, as a recipient of federal assistance, DDOT must ensure that all of its programs, activities, and public meetings are conducted in compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This act ensures non-discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. The Title VI Public Meeting Participant Questionnaire is used to help DDOT ensure that we are informing the public and conducting our meetings in a non-discriminatory manner in compliance with Title VI. Project comments and/or concerns may also be submitted through this form, and we appreciate anyone who is willing to complete the form. There is a QR code on your screen. If you hold your camera device, your phone device up to that QR code, it will also automatically take you to the form. During this WebEx, you have the ability to enter questions in the Q&A feature, and you may enter a question at any time during the entire presentation. However, we will not be answering questions until the end of the presentation. To send a question, if you are logged in from a computer, click the three-dot icon in the bottom right side of the WebEx window and select Q&A. A new panel or window will appear. In the Ask field, select All Panelists. Click the text box to type your question and press the Enter key to send it. Again, please note you may enter questions at any time throughout the presentation. We will be addressing questions at the end of the presentation. If you want to have a question or comment stated verbally, as this meeting is being recorded, it will also be recorded, you can raise your hand. This indicates to the project team that you would like to speak. So to virtually raise your hand, if you are logged in from a computer, click Participants on the bottom right of the WebEx window. A new panel or window will appear. Near the bottom of the panel window, there will be a small hand icon as shown on the screen. Click the hand icon to raise your hand. If you're calling into this meeting and don't have access to a computer, to virtually raise your hand if you are dialed in, simply dial *3 to use the raise hand function. When we go over comments and questions later this evening, we will go through the written questions first, and then we will go through the ones coming in through the phones. We also this evening will be having ASL interpretation. In order to better see the interpreters, you can click and drag the slider bar to adjust the size of the stage window. You can close any open panels to maximize the space so that you can see the presentation larger or our interpreters larger. And so at this time, I would like to introduce you to our team who is here this evening to present, as well as be available for questions, answers, and comments at the end of this evening's presentation. From DDOT is Amanda Stout, Ali Shakiri, Ellen Jones, Richard Kenny, Mike Goodnow, Derek Voigt. From the JMT project team, Jay Smith, Nick Farber, and again myself, Jennifer Ray. Our agenda tonight will be to review the project overview, discuss property acquisition and relocation, walk through the final design, review the construction plan, provide insight into the additional safety improvements DDOT will install soon, and the presentation will be followed by the question and answer session. So at this time, Amanda Stout will walk us through the project overview.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Good evening, everyone. So as many of you may be familiar with this project, we are tonight speaking about the intersection of Florida Avenue Northeast, New York Avenue Northeast, First Street Northeast, and Eckington Place Northeast. This area has often been referred to as the Virtual Circle or as Dave Thomas Circle, in reference to the Wendy's restaurant that was once located on an island in the center of the intersection. So this series of intersections has been ranked among the top 10 hazardous intersections in the district. It is very challenging, as anyone who has been through this series of intersections understands. Wayfinding is complicated. There's a lot of jockeying for movements among drivers, and very difficult for pedestrians and bicyclists to navigate. That is the challenge that is posed by this existing traffic pattern. And of course, there's a great opportunity for the District of Columbia to improve safety for all roadway users, particularly pedestrians and bicyclists, and to improve north-south and east-west transportation links across the city. This project, we're focusing on safety, and the reconfigured intersection will also create 3 new public open park spaces that have been designed with a really thoughtful, innovative landscape design, which we'll be talking about later in the presentation. A brief overview of the history. Again, some of you on this call may have been involved in meetings in the past. Others may be newer to it, but since about 2013, there have been multiple studies and public meetings for both this series of intersections and for the Florida Avenue Streetscape, which is a separate project from Florida Avenue from 2nd Street to H Street Northeast. And that project will be getting started construction in the spring of next year. In 2018, with Mayor Bowser's leadership and funding commitment, she directed DDOT to pursue what was referred to as Concept 6, which meant that the district would acquire that Wendy's property at the center of the intersection, and that would unlock the ability to redesign this series of intersections. From there, DDOT has had several other meetings. We held an open house in 2019 to discuss the NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, which was a important milestone for the project. And when the Federal Highway Administration approved that portion of the project, that really set in place the number of lanes and the turning movements that would be needed for this project. Historic preservation review was also a part of that federal highway review. And at the completion of that mark, it allowed DDOT to advance to the 30% design stage. DDOT has enjoyed a great partnership on this project with the NOMA Business Improvement District and the NOMA Parks Foundation. In June 2019, they worked with the Urban Land Institute to do a technical assistance panel that came up with some really interesting ideas that pushed this design in some positive directions. In December 2019, there was a public meeting to talk about the preliminary design. In March 2020, the DC Office of Planning conducted a public life study, which also looked at how people are using this area today and made some great recommendations about how to push the design for the future. In the spring of 2020, with the NOMA Parks Foundation, there was public meetings to discuss the concept designs for these 3 new public park spaces and how they can best be used by the community and what types of amenities and urban design characteristics would benefit those spaces. Those spaces were also reviewed by the Federal U.S. Commission on Fine Arts, National Capital Planning Commission, and the State Historic Preservation Office. Finally, in May 2021, we held a virtual public meeting, much like this, to discuss the 65% milestone design. Also wanted to talk about property acquisition and relocation. So as I mentioned, the property at the center of the intersection needed to be acquired by the district, and we did so in accordance with federal and district regulations. In January 2021, the District of Columbia acquired the title to that property by eminent domain. At the end of September of this year was the last day of Wendy's restaurant operations, and then the tenant vacated the site. DDOT has since fenced the property and boarded up the windows, as you can see in that image. And DDOT's contractor will be demolishing the building as part of the construction process, which will be starting in summer 2022. We'll be discussing more about construction later in the presentation. So this is the final design for the project, a really important milestone in this very significant project. As I've mentioned, the focus of this project is on safety for all users, with particularly significant improvements to pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. The focus of this redesign is making it safer, clearer, and simpler to be able to travel to and from neighborhoods, travel across the district, and be better connected. New York Avenue and Florida Avenue are principal arterials and important corridors, but this project is not aimed at increasing vehicular capacity. It's aimed at improving safety for all. A few key points about the design. We are restoring Florida Avenue to a two-way street that you'll be able to go in both directions, and that will improve east-west connectivity. That's where the letter A is on this diagram. Where the letter B is, we are closing the O Street slip lane, kind of north of the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and adding turn lanes on New York Avenue and Florida Avenue with appropriate signal timing and phasing to be able to make those intersections work more clearly. We're also realigning and converting First Street Northeast to a two-way street, which will improve that north-south connectivity from Noma to Eckington and make it easier for residents to get into and out of the neighborhoods. Finally, like many DDOT streetscape projects, this project will do a number of other things: adding street trees, replacing street lights, upgrading curbs and ADA accessible curb ramps. We'll be adding new traffic controls, green infrastructure and improving drainage to improve water quality. Also maintaining some historic visual corridors consistent with the L'Enfant plan. So this project, in addition to what's being done in the roadway, is adding a number of other amenities to the streetscape. Now we're going to talk about some aspects of the project that will benefit some specific modes. So I'll start with pedestrians. As I mentioned, so for pedestrian safety, we are having now, this new design will have clear, high visibility crosswalks to make the intersection safer and simpler to navigate. There'll be accessible pedestrian signals with leading pedestrian intervals. The medians that you see on New York Avenue and Florida Avenue will be ADA compliant with at least 6 foot wide medians for refuge. And by reducing driver confusion and making these intersections line up more clearly and logically, it will improve safety for pedestrians. I'll also note that in addition to the many residents and employees who are currently surrounding this area, there are a lot of private developments that are planned for the next few years. Several of them are going through the zoning and permitting development review process right now. You've also all probably saw in the news that the Securities and Exchange Commission is planning to move their 4,500 person office to New York Avenue and North Capitol Street, the area shown in blue. So DDOT is very aware that both during the construction of the intersection project and of these other development projects that we will coordinate on traffic patterns and traffic control plans, and that ultimately this intersection project will improve pedestrian safety and connectivity for both those who live and work in this area today and those who will be living and working in this area in the years to come. And now I'm going to turn it over to Nick Farver from JMT. He's going to talk about a number of aspects of this project that are going to improve bicyclist safety.
All right. Thank you, Amanda. As previously mentioned, bicycle safety and bicycle infrastructure is a major component of this project. Bike connectivity will be improved upon along Florida Avenue by continuing the protected bike lanes proposed in the Second State Street project and extending them through the intersection to connect First Street and Eckington Place. Additionally, a two-way protected bike lane will be included on First Street from M Street to Florida Avenue to provide additional bike connectivity to and from the Nomah and Eckington neighborhoods. Speaking of bike connectivity, we noticed that there was a missing link in bike lanes along First Street between M Street and M Street. So as an addition to the 65% plans, a two-way protected bike lane on First Street from M Street to N Street will be included in the design. This will provide continuous protected bike lanes from Union Station up through the intersection. Another addition to the 65% plans is the inclusion of protected bike lanes on Eckington Place from Florida Avenue to R Street. Along this stretch of roadway, there are existing striped bike lanes with parking adjacent to the existing curb, and there are 58 existing parking spaces. As shown on the screen, there is an existing typical section of Eckington Place showing the location of the parking lanes, bike lanes, and vehicular through and turn lanes. As an added safety measure, DDOT will convert the existing bike lanes along Eckington Place to protected bike lanes. In order to accommodate both protected bike lanes and parking, the protected bike lanes are proposed adjacent to the curb with a 3-foot buffer zone. The buffer zone will include precast concrete units with flexible delineators spaced in between. The addition of the protected bike lanes does result in the loss of 6 parking spaces, making the total parking space count 52. And as shown on the screen, there is a proposed typical section of Eckington Place. The space to accommodate the protected bike lanes was obtained by reducing the vehicular lane width in the existing condition from 11 and 12 feet to 10 to 10.5 feet in the proposed condition. And of course, the bike connection on Eckington to the Harry Thomas Way bike lanes will be maintained, which also connects to Alethea Tanner Park and the Metropolitan Branch Trail. Shown here is a plan view of the protected bike lanes on Eckington Place from Florida Avenue to just north of Harry Thomas Way. Parking has been moved to the outside, and the bike lanes have been moved adjacent to the curb, with the buffer zone to the left of the protected bike lanes. And here is a continuation of the Eckington protected bike lanes. A plan view here showing the design, showing the parking again on the outside, the protected bike lanes adjacent to the curb, and the precast bike buffer units with the flexible delineator post in between. We wanted to discuss some of the changes that have occurred to the bike lane pavement markings at First Street, Eckington Place, and the Florida Avenue intersection from the 65% design. Shown here, the westbound protected bike lane has been extended approximately 75 feet beyond the intersection to provide additional protection through the intersection heading westbound. Additionally, a bike box has been included on the southwest corner of the intersection to improve safety for eastbound cyclists. And also, bike boxes on the sidewalk have been included to aid in the north-south bike transition along Eckington Place and First Street. This here shows a zoomed out version of the entire project. with emphasis on protected bike lanes. What is shown here in green will ultimately be the project limits. You can see here the Eckington PBLs and the First Street PBLs, or protected bike lanes, are included within the project limits now. And what's shown here in yellow are the protected bike lanes on Florida Avenue from 2nd Street to 8th Street. The interim project has been completed, and now the capital project will start in the spring of 2022. And then what's shown in purple are some of the existing protected bike lanes in the area as well. Like I said, this slide here emphasizes the protected bike lanes. What's not shown is also the Metropolitan Branch Trail, as well as many other bike lanes in the area. So I will turn it back to Amanda to continue.
Great, thank you. I'm going to talk about a couple other aspects of the design. Safe connections to transit. So there is currently a WMATA Metro bus stop for routes 90 and 92. Those routes are on Florida Avenue Northeast. That the stop is at the northwestern corner of this intersection, and that stop will remain in the future, and the bus line will remain serving this community. Also, the project in general creates safer pedestrian and bicycle connections to the NOMA Gallaudet Metro Station by making it easier to navigate this area. I'll also note in the future, DDOT has a bus priority program that is taking a robust look at corridors across all 8 wards to determine where bus priority elements can be added to improve speed and reliability of bus service. So through that lens, DDOT will be looking at potential bus priority upgrades to these corridors. I want to talk a bit about, I mentioned earlier, these 3 new public open spaces for the community. You can see them noted here. Parcel 1 is to the west, adjacent to the People's Building. Parcel 2 is in the center, and Parcel 3 is immediately north of the ATF building. As I mentioned, DDOT has had a great partnership with the NOMA Business Improvement District and NOMA Parks Foundation, which really made this unique aspect of the project possible. The NOMA Parks Foundation hired New York City-based landscape architecture firm, SWA Balsley, who came up with the concept and schematic design for these 3 new spaces. Their firm does a lot of similar work in other cities, looking at how they can create thoughtful, innovative designs that will be used by people that are in the midst of really busy urban settings. So DDOT will construct these 3 new public park spaces as part of the intersection construction project. It is inherently linked, so at the same time that DDOT is doing the roadway work, the traffic signals, we will also be building these 3 open spaces. And DDOT is happy to be partnering with the NOMA Business Improvement District, who will be maintaining these 3 public spaces in the future, because there are a lot of non-standard items that are not part of DDOT's typical portfolio, but that will require extra attention, as I'll show you some pictures in a minute of the benches and play spaces and a really lovely landscape design that will be included as part of this project. So these next images are the same ones that have been shown at a previous public meeting, but wanted to refresh everybody of what these public spaces will look like. So this is parcel 1. You can see the lush landscaping and bulbs and flowers and trees. There's also a number of different types of seating arrangements that will be provided. There will be benches, there'll be movable furniture, a lot of attention is being paid to green infrastructure in this area. To see some additional images, this is parcel 2 in the center. We talked a lot about thinking about shade and sunlight and making sure that these would be spaces that people will use for a variety of different activities. And parcel 3 here, the one by the ATF building, has this really interesting play equipment, as well as movable furniture and lush trees, green spaces, benches, and a number of different amenities. And so this is something that, again, DDOT is excited to have be a part of this project. And these 3 open spaces will be constructed at the same time and as a part of the larger intersection safety project. As we've mentioned, the final design is now complete. As we've discussed, there have been a lot of changes and updates to the design along the way in response to public feedback. And DDOT is really excited to be at this milestone for this very important project. So we're now looking ahead toward the construction phase. Starting this winter, we will begin the solicitation and procurement for a construction contractor, which will take a few months. And we plan to start construction on this project in summer 2022, with construction lasting approximately 2 years. And now Nick is going to talk through a bit more about the thinking that has gone into the construction, planning for what that construction will look like going forward.
All right, thanks, Amanda. So I just want to give a general overview of the construction plan. DDOT and the design team, we have developed a recommended construction sequence and maintenance of traffic plan. However, the construction contractor may propose modifications for review and approval by DDOT. With that, though, DDOT and the construction contractor will host a public meeting and/or attend ANC meetings prior to the start of construction to share the planned construction phasing. And as with all DDOT projects, the construction updates and traffic advisories will be shared on the project website. I wanted to discuss a few of the guiding principles that are incorporated into a construction plan. All of the traffic control measures will be in accordance with DDOT's temporary traffic control manual, the manual and uniform traffic control devices, better known as MUTCD, and DDOT's pedestrian safety and work zone standards. There will be safe accommodations made for pedestrians and bicyclists according to DC's Safe Accommodations Act. The visual features. And DDOT will coordinate the maintenance of traffic plans for this project with the traffic control plans for nearby private development projects through the public space permitting process. Continuing with some of the guiding principles, the goal here is to minimize impacts to the traveling public and, most importantly, prioritize safety. We want to maintain traffic and access on all roadways. For this project, we are not anticipating any long-term detours of any sorts. This project will reduce vehicular capacity through the intersection during construction. That is anticipated, which will most likely result in some additional delays during construction. The project work hours will be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and work within the roadway that will be impeding traffic will be performed between the hours of 9:30 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. The project will utilize temporary lane closures to minimize impacts to the traveling public. And as the project starts, you might typically start to see some prep work. You might see the contractor out there doing some underground utility work, some storm drain work. And I think as a lot of people want to know, when will the Wendy's be demolished? It is anticipated to occur in the early stages of construction. However, as I discussed earlier, the contractor may propose an alternate sequencing plan. And I'll turn it back to Amanda.
Great, thank you. So throughout this presentation, we've been talking about this capital project that DDOT will be installing to redesign this intersection. But in the meantime, before that construction breaks ground next summer, there are a few additional safety improvements that DDOT plans to install very soon. So the first of those, and this was in response to a lot of the comments and discussion at our 65% design meeting in May, we will be reducing the speed limit on New York Avenue, a portion of it between 4th Street Northwest and Florida Avenue Northeast, shown in blue, from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour. So DDOT conducted an engineering study, sent out a notice of intent, and then completed a design. The yellow highlighted section from Florida Avenue to 4th Street Northeast will be used as a kind of transition area for the changing speed limit, guiding that transition. And so in the months ahead, DDOT will be installing flashing speed limit signs, driver feedback signs, and pavement markings, as well as the speed limit 25 signs to implement this change, which we think will have real positive benefits. Another thing that was discussed at previous meetings is automated traffic enforcement. So there is an existing red light camera at New York Avenue and Florida Avenue, sort of shown in red on this diagram. But in addition, DDOT proposes to add a speed camera on westbound Florida Avenue near 100 Florida Avenue Northeast, shown in yellow here, which plans to be moved to be installed by early next year. And broadly, DDOT's approach to the installation of all types of camera enforcement is based on traffic study investigations, in evaluating crash history, proximity to traffic controls, and physical feasibility. But these are two cameras that are being discussed for this area. And finally, there was a recent site visit a couple weeks ago to this intersection to discuss how really challenging the bottlenecks are in this intersection today. And DDOT took a look to see if there's anything we can implement in the immediate term. And there is. So we will be adding some signal timing changes, reducing the cycle lengths at 3 traffic signals, shown in yellow on this map, at Eckington in Florida, First in Florida, and P Street in Florida. So those shorter cycles should reduce some of the delays and frustration. We'll also be refurbishing some lane lines and adding do not block intersection and no turn on red signs at southbound Eckington Place Northeast. So again, in advance of the larger construction project, these should relieve a bit of the bottlenecks currently occurring. Back to Jennifer.
Thank you. So in order to stay connected with this project, we encourage you to send questions or comments to the project email address at floridaav@jmt.com. You can also contact the project manager, Ali Shakiri, at the email address at ali.shakeri@dc.gov, or by dialing 202-671-4612. And continue to stay updated with the project happenings at the project website, www.floridaavproject.com. That concludes the presentation for this evening. We will go on to the question and answer period and want to remind you about the comments. Again, restating from earlier, as a recipient of federal assistance, DDOT must ensure that all of its programs, activities, and public meetings are conducted in compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This act ensures non-discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. The Title VI Public Meeting Participant Questionnaire is used to help DDOT ensure that we are informing the public and conducting our meetings in a non-discriminatory manner in compliance with Title VI. Project comments or concerns may be also submitted through this form, and we appreciate everybody who is willing to complete the form. You can scan the QR code on your screen, and this will as well as go to the website listed at the top. This form will also be accessed and released automatically when you exit the WebEx meeting this evening. So at this time, we will open to comments, questions, or ideas. You can type your question into the Q&A feature. There are already several questions that have been typed in and comments, and I will be going through those shortly, asking our project team to provide responses. You can also dial *3 or select the 3 dots icon to raise your hand and ask a question live. Please note again, this meeting is being recorded and your voice will be recorded if you choose the live option. We'll keep a record of all the questions asked at this meeting. And so with that, I would ask our project team to make themselves available, and we'll begin with the first comments that have come in while the presentation was going on. Again, encourage everybody to continue asking questions throughout. So our first question that came in was stated, I spoke about this at earlier phases of the project and continue to object to the number of vehicle lanes offered through this design. While this design is marginally better than what exists today, it does not do enough to prevent serious death and injury. Why didn't this proposed 9-lane road keep the 6 lanes that are there today?
I guess being that nobody else is take it, this Jay Smith, I'll field that one. The project is, the intent of the project, as mentioned, is not to increase the volume of the intersection traffic. The traffic volume will remain as it is today. And we're not trying to increase the capacity to get traffic through the intersection. However, it is New York Avenue in Florida for major thoroughfares through the city. And so by doing this project, we're making the traffic operation better, less confusing, and we are also providing many safety improvements in the intersection, and that includes the improved crosswalks, signal timing, protected bike lanes, better connectivity from the Eckington community to other parts of the Noma district to the south, as well as better east-west connectivity. So there's a lot of positive aspects that are incorporated into this project. And I think it is a safer project. We're lowering the speed limit on New York Avenue. So there's many aspects of this project that are improving safety for all modes of transportation.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, Rick Kenny. I would just add one thing. I'm with DDOT's Deputy Chief Engineer. The present design of the intersection for a pedestrian crossing, say, going west from Metro to points west, they have to cross a number of slip lanes and pause in pork chop islands. And if you look at the total amount of asphalt and time spent crossing lanes, it's substantially more than what's achieved by this design. The project is not a road diet. It was not intended to reduce total throughput, but there is a substantial reduction in the number of lanes that pedestrians have to cross as a result of making this more of a traditional perpendicular, close to perpendicularly aligned intersection. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So moving on to the next question, an answer has already been provided back, but I will read both for the recording. Why is DDOT choosing curbside protected bike lanes on Eckington Place instead of extending the cycle track north? And the response that was provided is that there's more available roadway on Eckington Place, and the protected bike lanes help narrow the roadway for pedestrians. In addition, the protected bike lanes connect better than a cycle track to Harry Thomas Way and R Street. The next question that came in also had a response already provided, and again, I will read them both out loud. What is being done at Eckington and Florida Avenue to protect westbound bicyclists from being right hooked by car drivers? And the response is that physical protection of the bike lane is provided on Florida up to Eckington, helping to slow turns. In addition, There is a warning sign for turning vehicles to stop for bicyclists and pedestrians. Finally, green paint will be included through the intersection to highlight the path of bicyclists. The next is another comment actually along that same line, that the image wasn't on the screen for long, but it looked like the lanes were between the curb and parking, except for 3 parking spots in the intersection opposite Harry Thomas Way that the bike lane goes around. Can you reshare that image and clarify the plan there? So there is the image on the screen. If Nick or Jay would like to walk through further.
Sure,
Nick, you can take
Jennifer.
that.
If you could share the Eckington, the enlargement, please.
26, slide 26.
Yes.
There you go.
There it is. I believe the question was asking about the protected bike lanes along right across from Harry Thomas Way. What I think there's probably some confusion here is the 3 cars that are shown there is an old aerial image. There was there was a bump out installed here recently. So those cars they don't exist. There will be protected bike lanes through this area. You can see it. You can see they're represented. These precast units are represented by the black shown on the screen here. So that was just a graphical, misrepresentation from the aerial. But there are no vehicles that will be parked in that location.
Thank you. The next question, have there been any major changes to address comments received on the 65% design? This looks very much the same, but with nicer renderings.
I guess I can take that one. Some of the comments we received, including slowing the traffic down on New York Avenue. We've done that. We've lowered the speeds on New York Avenue to 25 miles per hour. There was also concern and comments about automated traffic enforcement in the area of the intersection. As Amanda mentioned, there is a red light camera at New York Avenue in Florida, and there's a plan to add a speed camera on Florida Avenue to the east of the intersection prior to the end of the year. We've extended the protected bike lanes on Eckington to improve bike safety on Eckington. We've added some improved bike safety at the intersection of Eckington and Florida Avenue by adding some bike boxes. And we've also improved bike connectivity by extending the bike lane, First Street, from M to N Street. So some of the comments we received at the 65 milestone meeting, we have incorporated into the design. And we appreciate those comments, and we think the end result is it's an improved design.
If I could add to that, Jay, there was
Sure.
something else that we did include was we included the protected bike lane on the west side of the Eckington intersection for the westbound bicyclists, additional 75 feet, so that when the DDOT is going to be investigating the future bike lanes along Florida Avenue heading west, so that has been addressed, already incorporated, so that when if and when they do get installed protected bike lanes, that's already been a part of the intersection design.
Great. Our next question, why such a long delay in the demolition of the Wendy's building? Why not get ahead?
Maybe I can answer that. In order to demolish that building, we have to advertise and hire a contractor. and award a contract for him to come and demolish the building. That's almost the same time as including it into the construction of intersection. The amount of time advertising and getting a contractor for demolition is the same as awarding the contract for the whole construction of the intersection. So, but that's going to be one of the first item the contractor, when he's on board, is going to do it to demolish that building. And there is a process too for demolishing the building. There is a certain environmental issues that needs to be resolved, and we need to go through that process, and we are on that process to get it done.
The next question refers to the not having an extension of the Florida Avenue protected bike lanes past First and Eckington, stating that there are 0 connections west of this project between K and R streets, and why not extend? This was answered through the Q&A as well, and that answer that was put in was the focus of the project is the intersection. The update to Move DC, the city's long-range transportation plan, recommends extending a bikeway west of the intersection, and DDOT will need to study this as a separate project. The next question, are sustainable native plants and trees being selected for the green spaces?
I guess I could, go ahead, Nick.
I was going to say all planting is going to be installed per the DDOT urban forestry direction. So yes, they will be sustainable plants within the area. There'll be probably a lot of perennials I know are going to be installed throughout the plaza areas.
And that includes native plants, yes.
Yes.
The next question is there automated traffic enforcement of drivers who block the box? This was also answered through the Q&A box, and the answer provided, DDOT does not currently field automated enforcement systems for do not block the box enforcement. The next question, has DDOT considered using protected intersections to make these areas safer for cyclists and pedestrians? For example, corner islands, curb extensions that allow pedestrians and cyclists to wait far ahead of stopped vehicles and improve sight lines. This has also been replied to through the chat, stating that we did take a look at protected intersections early in the project. Unfortunately, due to space limitations, we were not able to integrate them into the project. Next question, I would suggest wider planted medians and narrower car lanes to help slow traffic on New York and Florida avenues. I didn't see much change to these streets in the presentation.
I can answer that, Jennifer. I think that the answers really were, there was the NEPA study or the NEPA process that was done through FHWA, and we are, the bike lanes in that, or not the bike lanes, the travel lanes, the median widths, all that was established at that time, and it's kind of that's it.
The next question also has to do with the number of lanes of traffic. With 9 lanes of traffic, how long will the walk signal be across New York Avenue? And will there be no, it's written as beg buttons?
What was that last part, Amanda? Beg?
What's written in here states, will there be no beg buttons? And I'm wondering if that's supposed to be pedestrian buttons.
There will be push buttons at all the crosswalks. There'll be accessible pedestrian signals there also. They're high visibility crosswalks. We're using basically the latest design standards and thought and how to provide pedestrian safety at intersection crossings with this design. So I hope that I hope that answers the question.
The first part of the question was, how long will the walk signal be across New York Avenue?
Nick, do you remember the crossing interval time?
I think it's you get 3 feet per second, but so I don't have the exact numbers on me right now to measure the width, but you know, that length times 3, that's what you're gonna get. So it should be more than adequate enough time to make that walk from one end to the other side of the intersection. So.
Yeah, we also incorporate the pedestrian interval in there, which provides some time between when the red light, so if you're crossing the street, the light turns red, you see the walk signal, you start to cross. There's about a 6-second delay for the green time for the adjoining, intersection movement. So that gives the pedestrian some additional time to cross the crosswalk before the light of the adjacent traffic signal turns green, meaning you have more time when the turning vehicles start going into the crosswalk. So that's another improvement that we incorporated.
Oh.
The next,
Just to clarify, I'm sorry, it's 3.5 feet per second will be the time that for the countdown that'll be on the APS. So whatever that distance is, like I said, 3.5 feet per second.
the next is just appreciating a follow-up conversation. And so there is an answer in here already, and then I'll just pause if there's additional comment from the project team. For someone coming south from Harry Thomas Way, it means crossing the street twice in a block, which means cyclists won't do it. They'll just go on the sidewalk. The road would be narrowed the same amount if you include a cycle track, right? It's just a matter of whether the bike lanes are on both sides or one. So the question was really, the road would be narrowed the same amount if you include a cycle track, and asking if that is correct. And the response is the protected bike lanes on Eckington take up 16 feet of space versus the 10 to 12 feet for a cycle track. The next question, to avoid eastbound traffic constantly running the red light as it turns right from Florida Avenue onto First Street Northeast in the current configuration, which is a major source of gridlock, why aren't the signal cycles on eastbound Florida Avenue synced up so that cars can stop at Peace Street Northeast before they reach the light at First Avenue Northeast in Florida? So I know there were a lot of roads thrown in there. So it's really with the eastbound traffic running the red light coming right as it turns right from Florida Avenue onto First Street. Why aren't the signal cycles on eastbound Florida Avenue synced up so cars stop at P Street before they reach the light at First Avenue and Florida?
I can just try to answer this question. Again, it's very hard to analyze, and do traffic signaling kind of by discussion. So we have modeled this intersection existing, and our traffic engineers work hard. Again, the traffic signal is like a balloon. If you push from one side, it goes out from the other side. So it has every second of any traffic signal has a major effect on the rest of how this system at intersections, like complicated intersection like this works. So believe it or not, I said we have since we constructed this about 10 years ago, we have several times look at this intersection and tweak the signal timing to make it the most efficient, and then hopefully that's why we are doing the project. We are doing the project to completely make it safe and make sure that the people walking there, the bicyclists and the traffic can cross this intersection safely.
Next question is, at previous public meetings, there were comments regarding and a request for lane reductions. This is not shown to be incorporated. Why?
That was the first question, and I thought Nick provided a reply to that question.
Next question, are large canopy trees being selected in public plazas to ensure adequate shade, mitigate the urban heat island effect present in this area?
The trees that are proposed are, yes, some are large specimen trees that provide shade. We're providing, especially along the streets, we're providing a minimum of 6 foot wide street tree spaces so that we can use larger trees. So yes, throughout this area, there are specimen trees that can get quite large and provide the shade that we desire.
I'll just add that that's something that was looked at by the landscape architecture firm that was designing the spaces. The Office of Planning did their public life study. We looked at the fact that these spaces are really in a very, urban intersection, and being aware of shade and light, as well as security and protection, and designing these spaces in a really, really thoughtful way. And all of the landscaping and trees are a part of that.
Yes, and I also wanted to mention we work with DDOT Urban Forestry throughout the whole process to make sure that we incorporated, important types of species that work in an urban environment.
Has DDOT considered using dark sky compliant lighting on its new construction projects, lights that are fully shielded, pointing downward to reduce light pollution?
We normally do that, yes. Our designers have looked at lighting at this for this intersection, and the lighting that is suggested to be installed is going to meet that requirement.
How will residential neighborhoods north of the intersection in Eckington be impacted by street closures during construction?
Again, that I don't think this is going to have that big an impact for the traffic and people living north of the intersection. It's going to be because, again, I constructed this about 10 years ago from the other configuration to what's existing today, and the way we approached the construction sequencing, the impact was minimum, but there is more impact actually to New York Avenue traffic and Florida traffic, especially during rush hours. But I don't think there's going to be that much impact to Eckington. Again, I understand people trying to use Eckington to leave the neighborhood and go south. They might be affected, but the neighborhood itself shouldn't be that much affected.
Were raised crosswalks considered for any parts of the project?
Given the volume of traffic, type of arterial road, these are raised crosswalks, so just would not be appropriate locations.
So a number of questions here rolled into one, and I'll just break them apart. Could you add cameras further east on Florida on either side of Trader Joe's? And just going through the other statements in here, just worried about pedestrians waiting at the furthest west corner of Florida and First. and too many cars rush westbound on Florida across New York Avenue, are you shortening the light westbound on Florida? So as we're the 3 in 1 here, so we'll go back to the first. Could you add cameras further east on Florida Northeast on either side of Trader Joe's?
Yeah, I'll just start on the automated traffic enforcement camera question. As I mentioned, the locations and the siting of those cameras are part of a larger effort within DDOT, where we look across the district at the areas that are most appropriate for those cameras. So the answer is not as part of this project, but potentially as part of DDOT's larger efforts. We could look at additional locations.
All right. Then the other in here is the question was, are you shortening the light westbound on Florida? And that's based off the statement of there are many cars rushing westbound on Florida across New York Avenue. So are you shortening the light westbound on Florida?
Well, the signal phasing takes into account, multiple aspects here. We have a turn lane, a left turning lane, we have a pedestrian phase. So taking that all into account, the phase probably would get shorter, it'd probably get longer. And also, we also have, now we have an eastbound movement, which before, everyone had to turn right at First Street. So it's a completely different kind of operation. So it's hard to say it's shorter or longer, but I'll just say it's different because it's a different operation.
The next question has to do with enforcement for speeding and the traffic cameras, stating that since a high proportion of drivers on New York Avenue are from outside of the district and DC does not have the ability to enforce tickets given to these motorists, how do we think the speed limit reduction in traffic cameras will have any impact on traffic calming? So having to do with enforcement for drivers from outside of the DC area coming through.
I can just add generally that the automated traffic enforcement is one tool in DDOT's toolbox. And as I mentioned, it is not, there's an integral part of the design. So the design team has designed this intersection to be safer for all users. And then the traffic cameras are an additional program that DDOT looks at comprehensively across the district. And some of the questions about enforcement and ticketing are kind of beyond the scope of this, well, valid questions are beyond the scope of this particular design team.
Great. And just a quick note, we do have just over about 15 minutes left. There are still many questions in here that have been coming into the Q&A. Please continue to ask the questions in there, and we will be continuing to go through these, but just doing that quick time check for everyone as well. So next question, hi, was the addition of any public restrooms considered in this project? And that's probably most pertinent to the public space areas.
I don't believe so. I think there is a working group and maybe some efforts in council and in other agencies to look at public restroom facilities across the district, but it was not a particular component of this project. No.
So another question that a response has been provided, but we'll read both aloud. Other than the new signage in the transition area coming down the hill from the bridge, is anything being done design-wise to encourage drivers on New York Avenue to slow down? Are the lane widths remaining the same? In which case, why would a driver slow down? And the response that was provided through the chat was that westbound motorists will encounter warning signage, a radar-activated flashing speed limit sign, and a driver feedback sign. In addition, adjacent to these will be pavement markings stating 25-mile-per-hour word messages in each lane. The lane widths on the bridge deck are not being altered on this design. Similar question, I believe we've answered earlier, but just to restate, what are the travel lane widths going to be for Florida and New York Avenue?
I can answer that, Jennifer. The travel lane width will be 11 feet, and turn lanes will be 10 feet wide, plus minus. So, and that is actually on New York Avenue. Going back to the last question, that is there is a reduction in the travel lane widths along New York Avenue from 12 feet to 11 feet.
All right, this is a follow-up from a previous question regarding the protected intersections. Why wasn't there enough space on the protected intersections? And would there have been enough space if there were fewer lanes for cars?
I assume the person is referring to Eckington. The FedEx property comes out to the, into the actual back of the sidewalk there. So we tried to fit a little sort of eyebrow shaped island in there to provide a space, protected space for bikes, but we could not fit it with the, considering the sidewalk, the roadway, and the bike lane, which we had to, incorporate into the road. So fortunately, there just was not enough space to fit that in there. And we need to maintain the lanes that we have based on our NEPA approved document. So the lanes are specified by our traffic studies and are approved by NEPA. So you can't really reduce the lanes.
Another question regarding signal timing. Will pedestrians have dedicated time to cross and cars dedicated time to turn in areas where the two might conflict?
We do have a pedestrian phase for the signal. As we mentioned, we have accessible traffic signal, pedestrian signals, which provide the audible sound that, sometimes you hear that chirping sound, and it addresses all users. Additionally, we have the leading pedestrian interval at these as part of the traffic and pedestrian operation, which provides an additional 6 seconds from when the light changes to allow folks to get into the crosswalk and cross before the adjacent signal turns green. So these are, basically the latest, innovations or design principles we use to provide the safest possible crosswalks.
In the 65% design meeting,
Close a lane of traffic to mow the grass or maintain the landscaping. So it's going to be a brick median instead.
all right, this question pertains to the park design, asking about some amenities for the park design. Are there any opportunities for a set of pull-up exercise bars at the play area on the southeast end of the park? If not, could something small be added, or is the park design finalized? And what type of play areas are proposed there?
I can start. Jay might remember better. So I think you're referring to parcel 3, which is the one north of the ATF building, and it does have a kind of play equipment structure on it, which is, I believe, designed both for children and for adults. And it's kind of the design team was really looking at ways that parks and public spaces are activated in other cities, and this is the type of equipment that they recommended and then was discussed throughout the concept planning. And so it's, the question was about whether it's I guess could be used for exercise, it could be used for other types of play. But the designs for those spaces, yes, are finalized now.
Thank you. And probably right back to another question regarding the parks, which I know this is our intersection here, but as they're related to each other also. Last time the landscape architects mentioned having some sort of noise mitigation devices so you can enjoy the parks without having the traffic noise. Is that still the case?
I think so. I think I recall with one of the things that was discussed was the kind of berms in the landscape. There's going to be these concrete benches and berms and trees, and the design of that was intentionally done both to provide a sense of safety and security when you're inside of the park, but also not too much privacy that you feel isolated and from a security standpoint. And some of that is also based on buffering some of the noise and congestion from cars. And so I think a lot of those aspects of the landscape urban design were things that the design team factored in to these spaces to make them as usable and user-friendly as possible. If any of my colleagues want to add to that.
I'll just mention, Amanda, that at one time the design, including these screens that SWA Balsley suggested would help, given this such a busy intersection with a lot of traffic. But the Commission on Fine Arts suggested that they weren't appropriate, so they were removed from the design.
That's right.
Another question, why opt for a red light camera on New York Avenue instead of a speed camera? Drivers coming down New York Avenue are more likely to speed down the road than jump a red light. So this was answered in the Q&A already, and just to read it out loud, the red light enforcement camera requires in-ground construction and hence is included in the project. If speed enforcement is determined to be needed in addition, it can be added at that time as in-ground construction is not needed for the placement of that camera. So another question just related back to reducing the number of lanes. So I know that this was asked early on and answered, but Nick, if perhaps you can just discuss it again, why not, are we not able to reduce the number of lanes? Just for our.
Sure, Jennifer. So, the NEPA evaluation was done, and as part of a NEPA evaluation, there's also a traffic analysis done, and with that traffic analysis, the process that DDOT went through, it was determined that the number of lanes you see on screen is what was going to be efficient to, like I said, maintain traffic. We're not trying to increase the level of service or throughput through this intersection. It's more of a safety project, but we are required to maintain what is there. So per the NEPA process and through FHWA, this was the final result.
I'll also add, it was I think Rick discussed it earlier, that we're closing those slip lanes that are again north of the ATF building now at O Street. And so right now there are still a lot of lanes of asphalt, and creates kind of a multi-stage crossing and again different turn pockets and kind of a confusing intersection. So by squaring up this intersection, we still needed to add some of these turn lanes and making sure some of the movements were possible. But closing off that O Street slip lane area was really important to the project, and making sure that this all works together holistically. The signal timing, the number of lanes, the timing for pedestrians to cross, it all is synced up together to create a clearer intersection.
Right. And another question that was asked early on, but we'll circle back to this as well, and really talking about with the recommendations that have come from the public, what has been incorporated into this final design. And so I know, Jay, I believe you had answered this earlier, talking about a number of the changes from 65% to the final design, which were very much based off of comments and additional analysis completed. So if you could just share again, what are the changes that have been taken into the current design from
Sure.
public comments?
Yes, yeah, we listened to the comments we got at the 65% milestone level of design. Again, we slowed traffic down on New York Avenue. We reduced the speed limit to 25 miles per hour. There's, as far as speed enforcement, there's a stop light camera, enforcement camera on New York Avenue, and a planned speed camera that'll be installed on Florida Avenue east of the intersection before the end of the year. We incorporated protected bike lanes along Florida Avenue, along First Street. And we incorporated bike boxes and protected bike areas at Eckington, First Street, and Florida Avenue. We extended the protected bike lanes up Eckington to R Street, and also completed the link between M and N, connecting the whole network of bike trails or bike lanes, so that we have a connection between north and south here. I guess those are some of the things that we've done. You know, we've improved the final landscape design, working with urban forestry. It's just the whole intersection is just going to be a better, safer, more attractive place. And as Rick mentioned, there were all these different lanes and multiple lanes that people had to cross. You know, we're eliminating 4 lanes of traffic you would have had to cross to the east of the intersection along Florida Avenue. So again, people would have to cross New York, then another 2 lanes of traffic, which would have taken you to New York Avenue, and then another 2 lanes of traffic, which taking you eastbound on Florida Avenue. So the whole intersection is really designed to provide a safer, more attractive place for the community, connectivity to the adjacent communities. And you know, anybody who uses this knows how confusing and what a gridlock it can be at times because of the many different movements you have to do to get through here. So it's just it's not perfect perhaps in some eyes, but it's certainly a vast improvement over what's there now.
And we are coming towards the end of our time on our meeting this evening. So I do have one more question in here that is related back to a question that was asked earlier regarding protected intersections. And when we replied to it, we talked about it in respect to one intersection. And the question is, what about with all of the different intersections? Could there be these protected intersections, looking at each of the different intersections involved in this project? And earlier when we answered this, I believe we just
I
answered
thought
response.
Jay, I thought Jay provided respond to that question. Is again, the question actually previously had 2 parts, and the second part was, if we do that, that required reducing the number of lane? And the answer is yes. And since we are not reducing the number of lane, I guess it was not possible. If it was possible, the design team would incorporate it. And we tried, our best to design, the detail such a way that, as everybody said, to improve the safety and mobility of pedestrian, bikes, and vehicle throughout this intersection.
And one final question, we're able to get one last question in here. This goes back to traffic signal timing. Will the pedestrian signal cycle happen throughout every single traffic cycle? So will that be incorporated, or will it require the push button to be pushed?
I'm not sure. Nick, do you, I think there are push buttons available, but at all the intersections, they provide safe crossing for pedestrians.
Yes, yes, Ali, we will be providing push buttons at all of the intersections that are signalized.
I think the cycle incorporates a pedestrian.
Automatically it's going to happen, but there is push button,
Yes.
to make sure that, again, that the push button has, I guess, the sound, the chirping sounds that is a combination of that provides help for, people that, they need to cross these intersections.
Yeah, you don't have to have a push the push button to have a pedestrian phase.
Yeah.
If you stood there and
Right.
forgot to press the button, there'd still be a pedestrian phase.
Right, it'll come up at every cycle.
All right. Well, it is now 8:31, and that does conclude our public meeting this evening regarding the Florida Avenue, New York Avenue Northeast intersection final design. Again, thank you everyone for joining for tonight's meeting. This session has been recorded, and a recording will be placed on the project website as of tomorrow, November 16th. When we exit this WebEx, you will automatically receive the comment form that I had mentioned earlier, and we encourage everybody to certainly fill that out regarding the public meeting as a whole, as well as any comments, suggestions, or additional questions you may have regarding the project. So again, I'll just put the screen back up here for a moment to stay in touch with the project. Please feel free to use the project email, reach out to the project manager, and certainly stay up to date with everything that is going on at the project website, www.floridaavproject.com. Again, thank you and have a wonderful evening.